President Biden and President-elect Trump set to sit down in the Oval Office, their first face-to-face since Trump's historic election victory. Trump's new administration is rapidly taking shape. The newest announcement catching some of Trump's allies off guard. Fox News personality Pete Hegseth tapped for defense secretary. Trump posting, "With Pete at the helm, America's enemies are on notice." Hegseth, who's appeared on Fox for a decade, is an Army National Guard veteran, an infantry officer who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. He would lead 1.3 million active duty troops. He's indicated how he'd shake up the military, arguing it focuses too much on diversity. Last week discussing how he would, quote, course correct.
Any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever, that was involved in any of the DEI woke, it's got to go.
Also saying he opposes women in combat roles.
It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated.
Trump also announcing billionaire Elon Musk and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy will lead a new Department of Government Efficiency, comparing its creation to the atomic bomb program, the Manhattan Project. Trump says Musk and Ramaswamy will provide advice from outside of the government. Musk, who's been an advisor to Trump since the election and frequent presence at his Mar-a-Lago club, runs companies that have billions of dollars in government contracts.
Elon thinks he can cut the costs of our government by $2 trillion.
Ramaswamy has campaigned on ending federal agencies, including the FBI and Department of Education. But it's unclear how much power the commission would have. And former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, an evangelical Christian for U.S. Ambassador to Israel. Huckabee strongly supports Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank.
There is no such thing as a West Bank. It's Judea and Samaria. There's no such thing as a settlement. They're communities.
President-elect Trump has announced some of his cabinet picks much faster this go-around than he did 8 years ago. Still, some could face potential roadblocks in the Senate that confirms nominees for the high-level positions. Trump, as you may have seen, is trying to avoid any possible delays like those that he faced in 2016. He's demanding Republican senators allow what they call recess appointments that would temporarily place his picks in office without a confirmation hearing or a Senate vote. Back to you.
All right, Peter, thank you.
Let's bring in retired Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis to talk more about President-elect Trump's pick for defense secretary. He is a senior fellow and military expert at Defense Priorities and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive. Good morning. Good to have you with us. As we just heard in Peter's piece, Pete Hegseth made some headlines for recent comments about the military when it comes to diversity, when it comes to women in combat. How is the defense community viewing this choice for this crucial senior role, especially since he has no real administrative experience, and now he would be in charge of the entire military?
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge to say the very least. And this choice makes sense on one level, and it's a bit of a head scratcher on another, even from the perspective of the Republican side. There's probably nobody more loyal to Trump and his vision, his America First vision, than Pete Hegseth. Of course, he's got a lot of combat experience of his own. He was in the military, so he understands how all of those things affect at the tip of the spear. But this is, in my view, the Secretary of Defense is the most challenging position on the entire cabinet because of the huge array of things that he has to do. He's got to set national security strategy. He's got to he's number one. He's the second in command of all of the forces, even above the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff. But he's also the principal advisor to the president. And what that means is that if the president is looking at anything, and I'll just hypothetically pick something like maybe the China-Taiwan issue and whether we should or shouldn't engage, he's got to be able to say, here's the objectives, here's what our forces could do, here's what they can't do, here are our limitations. So you have to really understand how the Defense Department is manned and staffed, and whether it's capable, and what our ammunition stocks are, et cetera. All those things come into play, and that is an enormous amount of pressure on anybody's shoulders.
Explain to us the background that defense secretaries typically come from, and then also tell us about the ultimate role this person plays.
Yeah, ordinarily you've seen like Secretary Austin, the current Secretary of Defense, somebody who was a general in the military. We've had a number of those, but very often it's come from senior political figures, folks who've been like senators or so, or in charge of large corporations, because this is an incredible monstrosity of a bureaucracy. that has got all kinds of, high expensive categories, things that you have to manage, obviously almost $1 trillion of a budget, but that you also have to be a diplomat and a politician, because we have a significant role internationally, like Secretary Austin right now. He's dealing with both friend and foe overseas. You've got to have a really good diplomatic head on your shoulder. Internally, you've got to be a good politician, because there's a lot. I worked in the Pentagon for about 3 years when I was on active duty, and I can assure you there's a lot of political things going on in there. You've got to be able to manage, the Army generals, the Air Force generals, the Navy generals, and all this internecine conflict that comes. Everybody's trying to posture, and you've got to be able to manage all that. And look, I understand that what Hegseth said on that clip he showed a minute ago, where he wants to come in and fire a bunch of generals. You can't make enemies on day one, so he's going to need a lot of help.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis, appreciate your perspective and your experience. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
For the latest on the Trump transition, we're joined by NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns and NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. Good morning to both of you. So, Dasha, let's begin with you and these new picks by President-elect Trump to join the administration. Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, they're being tasked with taking a look at government spending. A lot of people have heard of them, but Mr. Trump's choice for defense secretary, not so well known. And so far, it seems is the pick drawing the most backlash. Walk us through all this and the reaction to these picks.
Oh, my friends, good morning. There is just so much to unpack here as these picks are coming fast and furious. Let me start quickly with the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, as they're calling it, which is a meme and cryptocurrency reference, and could mean that Ramaswamy and Musk have the power to potentially, essentially dismantle the government bureaucracy. It's something that Ramaswamy campaigned on. They're talking about slashing government spending by up to $2 trillion. The question is, how much does that impact critical programs like Medicare, like Social Security, like the defense budget? The second piece, Pete Hegseth, that is also drawing some backlash. He is a Fox News host and commentator. Yes, he served in the military, but he does not have any government experience, and that is concerning to defense experts and people who have served in the government for a long time, given how critical that position is. He also holds some views that people find controversial. He has said, for example, that he doesn't believe women should serve in the military. He is Trump's guy to go after wokeism in the military, which is another thing that President-elect Trump campaigned on. So these are consequential choices that are unexpected and non-traditional that could have a big impact, guys.
Dasha, also President-elect Trump named former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee as his pick for U.S. ambassador to Israel. Now, if confirmed, he'd be the first non-Jewish person to hold the role in more than a decade. What role is he expected to play, and how much of an impact could he have there?
So Huckabee is a self-described Zionist. He is a staunch supporter of Israel. He has advocated for a one-state solution, which is a departure from U.S. policy and position. And he is likely to play a very active role, given everything that we know, that I'm sure you'll talk about later in the show, that's going on in the Middle East and the war between Israel and Hamas, guys.
Monica, let's bring you in and talk about today's big meeting at the White House between Mr. Trump and President Biden. What can we expect in Trump's first visit to the White House in nearly 4 years?
Yeah, and really before 4 years ago, this was a really common tradition. This is something that outgoing presidents normally would invite the winners of the election to come visit the White House, to sit down in the Oval Office. We, of course, saw it with then President Obama inviting then President-elect Trump 8 years ago, but then that didn't take place in 2020. So today will be fascinating because of the dynamics of the people who were in this meeting. Of course, it was President Biden, who was the nominee up until 3 months ago, who was facing off with Donald Trump. And it was also Joe Biden, who was coming into office last time, but wasn't extended this courtesy. So we know the two are expected to sit down. We'll see how long the meeting is. Back when Obama and Trump met, it lasted more than 90 minutes. Then President Obama called it an excellent discussion that was wide-ranging. And then the two briefly spoke, and that was that. Now, there are a couple other elements to this that last time we can draw upon to see if they're going to take place. But for instance, today, former First Lady Melania Trump is not expected to accompany her husband and sit down with current First Lady Jill Biden. Now, that's something we're told that the invitation was extended to her, but maybe that will happen down the line. We shouldn't expect to see that today. And then secondly, Vice President Harris, of course, lost the election to Donald Trump, but she's still the sitting vice president. So normally she would extend an invitation to the vice president-elect. So in this case, Senator J.D. Vance, to come for a meeting, to visit the Naval Observatory where the Vances will be living come January. And that hasn't happened yet. So many layers, so much complexity to everything that happened in the election and now what's happening. But the priority for the Biden administration is to really emphasize this peaceful transfer of power. And that's what they're going to try to put on display, to try to really pledge to have a smooth transition in these last 60 or so days.
And in those last 60 or so days, Monica, what are the top priorities for the president and his administration in the time he has left?
And we know that there are going to be things from legislation that they pass that they're going to try to implement. They're going to try to shore up some final commitments from private companies when it comes to things like manufacturing or infrastructure, things that they want to make sure are pretty much put in place before the Trump administration returns. And then there are things like making sure that all of the funding that was allocated to Ukraine gets out the door. That's something else that they're going to be prioritizing. And there's really this emphasis on trying to, quote, Trump-proof and safeguard some of these policies and programs that they know once Donald Trump returns to the White House could be undone given their very differing views on a lot of key policy issues. Savannah and Joe.
Dasha and Monica, thank you both.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.